Welcome to the Babbling Pastor Podcast with your favorite host in the world, Michael, and
your second favorite, Rob.
nice. All right, so today I want to thank first of all our sponsors, no one again, for sponsoring the episode, and we're back again. It's probably honestly, it's a good thing, Rob, that we don't have any sponsors at this point because these next 3 episodes are just going to be all the way up to November. Yeah, it's just gonna. Who knows, right? Unless it was like Patriot Mobile or like that beef company. I mean, I don't. It's just not. I don't know. I don't know if anybody would be like
Yeah,
down.
yeah. It's funny because like what you tend to do if you have some sort of like YouTube account like you do, some of what you're going to do as honest youth pastor, and some of what I'll do when I do post every once in a while, um, and bearded Bible thinker is stuff that's just relevant, right? Stuff that's news cycle right now kind of stuff, like what's trending um, and why is it trending and those kinds of things. And and yet I'm sure that even though right now we are heading into an election here in just a few weeks, I'm sure that there will be some kind of criticization in the comments because we're talking about the election or politics or something like that. Even though like it's pretty much the biggest thing going on right now.
I would say that's a safe. Yeah, it's a safe bet to say that. All right, so today we're gonna look specifically at just. I would say. Well, first of all, I need to clarify for everybody watching or listening. You haven't seen the ad we're about to watch, and it is
Yeah, I haven't.
I don't want to oversell it, but I think it is probably the quintessential piece of cinema. It's one of the most quintessential pieces of cinema I've ever seen in my life. So let's go over.
I
Over
don't
to the
even know
screen
where
here.
this is going, but I bet it could get an Oscar today.
I would
So,
say, I would say pretty easily. Yeah. All right. So, well, here we go, Rob. I don't want to. I don't want to really say anything other than I can see why somebody would like swing their vote after this. I don't want to. I want
oh
to.
wow, okay.
I don't want to put the bar too high, but I believe that
Okay,
that
so
could.
be open-minded is what you're saying. I
Yes.
need to be open-minded.
I'll
Yeah.
say. I'll say 2 things. Be open minded and try to put your misogyny on the shelf if you could while we're
Okay.
doing this. So okay,
All right.
here we
Sounds good. Consider it shelved.
okay, here we go, Rob.
Should probably hide the MacArthur commentaries back here. There we go.
All right, here we go. Here we go.
Agree that our faith requires.
You're
Wrong
muted.
one. Yeah,
There we
I
go.
know. Wrong one, wrong one. Here we go. Now here
Okay.
we go.
I'm a man.
Boom.
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Meat.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
I ain't afraid of bears.
That's what bear hugs are for.
And I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
They want to use IVF to start a family? I'm not afraid of families.
They want to be childless cat ladies?
Have all the cats you want.
Woman wants to be president?
Well, I hope she has the guts to look me right in the eye and accept my full-throated endorsement.
Because I'm man enough to support women.
Man enough to know what kind of donuts I like.
Man enough to admit I'm lost, even when I refuse to ask for directions.
Man enough to not ban young women from reading Little Women.
Or one of those pants books that the sisters like.
I'm man enough to raw dog a flight. It sucked. Not worth it.
I'm man enough to be emotional in front of my wife.
In front of my kids.
In front of my horse. I'm man enough to tell you that I cry at Love Actually, Good Will Hunting.
West Side Story.
That and Predator.
And I'm sick of so-called men domineering, belittling, and controlling women just so they can feel more powerful. That's not how my mama raised me.
I love women.
I love women who support their families.
Women who decide not to have families.
Women who take charge.
And I'm man enough to help them win.
So Rob, the question is really, are you man enough?
After careful deliberation, I'm not. Um,
Now I
I
have.
don't.
There's two
So,
things. There's
yeah,
two
yeah. Go
things
ahead.
you do have to know about this. So at the bottom, this is not authorized by any candidate, and it was not paid for by any candidate. All right, this was
Well, that's
somebody on
good.
YouTube that like legit made this. Now I know it's hard to tell, so I'm just going to clarify before we get into this. This is not SNL. This is not parody. This is
It's
like a
actually
for.
not supposed to be parody.
It's not supposed to be. Everyone was very confused if it was supposed to be parodied or not, but it's not. The guy that made it, he went on like line and was talking about like it, and it's not parody. So, yeah. Even though it really does appear to be parody. I thought it was SNL when I saw it. It is not.
You know,
It's not.
there was this moment on Stephen Colbert not long ago that went a little bit viral because whoever it was that he was interviewing, I don't know these things really. I don't watch them.
Yeah.
It was a news anchor or something from CNN. Did you see this? And
No.
he said he started to say something. It was just a clip that I saw. He started to say lead into the next thing he was going to say, and he said, um, in all seriousness, he said, "No, I know that you guys are objective over there at CNN," and immediately the crowd, who is decidedly on the left side of the fence, right, to attend his show and taping and whatever, the crowd immediately busted up into laughter, and it confused both Stephen Colbert and the gal that he was interviewing.
they're like
And she,
that's not a joke, guys.
yeah, right, yeah. She said, "Is that supposed to be a laugh line to him?" And he said to her, "Well, no, it wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it was." Um, I think that's what I thought of when I saw this. And then when you said this is not supposed to be parody, I think this was an accident, much like that clip of Colbert and his show. I think that this was like, um, seriously, I don't know who. I won't say no one has ever, okay? Because I mean I don't know that. No one can know that. But I don't know even one person, and have not heard of even one person who has attempted to not let uh a young lady read Little Women. That was kind of a funny moment to me. It's like, yeah, okay, I get your book banning thing that you're talking about, but most of that has to do with like, I don't want
Well,
my daughter or son to be reading how to
I
masturbate when they're, in the third grade.
somebody apparently looked that up. I guess it was somebody on the Democratic side that actually banned. That's why people were confused, because they're like, somebody on the Democratic side actually did ban Little Women, or wanted to ban Little Women, but it was because of the slavery aspect in the book. And so,
Mm,
like, I didn't go verify any of that, but apparently, because I was confused when I first saw that, and I'm like, I don't think anybody's tried to ban Little Women.
mm.
In fact, it's more of a like an empowering book for women, really. And I guess I don't know why that was included in the actual ad, but yeah. So
Yeah, what you want to do always is you always want to shoot for um, so whenever you're writing a novel from here on out, whatever you do, if it's set in some time in history, what you don't want to do is be historically accurate in any way. You want to make sure
yeah,
that you erase anything that could potentially possibly be offensive to anyone, and just pretend like it didn't happen. That would be the best thing if you want it to hit the shelves. So, um, no, that whole thing was really funny because it's like, um, if it were meant to be parody, then it would be like, okay, that was pretty good. That was pretty funny. right? But if this is meant to be like a legitimate commercial that someone came up with,
Yeah.
to try and sway people, it's like this, whoever created this doesn't know a lot about manhood, I guess.
That,
Not that we're meant to like, you
yeah.
know, be misogynistic or hate women or anything like that. But there's just a lot on there that's like, bro, do you even have one friend that's a dude? Like whoever made this?
Well,
Like,
that was so I've already made a reaction video to it, but that was one of my points was that
oh, okay.
it was kind of like whenever you see like the thing that really got me was the old dude in the garage. I was like, first off,
The
I,
the
I
biker dude.
yeah, I know a handful of guys with like garages. None of them look like that. The dude, I mean, nothing in there's dirty. Nothing's got oil all over it. There's no metallic parts just shattered throughout the entire garage. I mean, there's like, that's just not a garage. And then the same thing with the guy with the horse. It's just kind of like, you don't have gloves, bro. Your shirt's not dirty. Like, there's just like, it's one of the things where it's like, if you were going to do a legit ad about like being a man, like take a few cues from the Marlboro Man, right? Like it's one of the things where there is this sort of earthiness, but it's not in that commercial. That is the most B-roll, like backstage sort of ad I've ever seen. Now I think what it does open up to, and this is what I want to talk to you about, because I think this would be a really good sort of conversation on this really quick. That would be shorter than my overall video that I did on it. I think it does open up a conversation about what it is to be a man versus the perception that obviously a certain segment of the population has about what it means. Like what I found interesting was this person that made it, as far as I can tell, is left leaning. And therefore would probably say, well, you can't define man and woman. But yet when they make an ad about men, it's this stereotypical, like this, and this, like I eat carburetors for breakfast sort of line. And I think it's whenever we're talking about this, we can go, okay, well, objectively, from a Christian worldview, what is a guy then? Like, what is a man? And is it all of these things? So like they included like I cuss, I work in the garage, I eat all this meat. And I'm like, all right, well, these are all stereotypical things, but what, according to the scriptures, do we see as a man, right? And so I've already kind of talked through a bit of that, but I want to kind of bounce it off of you a little bit. Obviously, when you're doing discipleship, when you're teaching on it, when, you know, the appropriate passages come up, there are certain things that the scriptures say, like, this is what a man looks like. This is what a man does. Proverbs are full of like wisdom for men. Ephesians 5 is clearly like a passage on men and women as far as marriage goes. What benefit, like what little pearl of wisdom can we pull out of this ad that is so SNL parody, but not that?
Well, so okay, first of all, anytime that there is a stereotype, as much as people want to buck against things, if it's a stereotype, chances are it's because there's at least some kind of truth to it, right? Or at least statistically. So statistically, there are a lot of dudes who can work on their car, right? Or fix their family's vehicle or whatever. That tends to be in a family in which there's someone in the household who can who has the ability and knowledge to fix the car when it's broken down. I mean, I don't know the stats, but that is almost certainly going to be the guy. I mean, in most cases, right? Stereotypical. Um, and you could say that about a lot of those other things uh, that that you see in there. So there's some sense, but I don't think it's just so in that. Let me just use that example again. In that particular example, it's actually not about the car. Uh, First, it's about uh, providing for and taking care of my family, right? Even in that example. And so if I don't know how to fix my wife's traverse, um, I ought to provide well enough to be able to take it and get it fixed, right? Or at least I have that burden on me, right? Um, and my wife should be able to depend on me, perfect world, for that, one way or the other, right? So so that's why there are stereotypes, right? Um, and and so I don't think that there's, in some sense, although, again, if this was meant to be parody, it would be gold, right? Because you can tell that there's at least, it seems to be that there's at least some intention to mix some comedy into the ad, um, to uh, to go, like to surround the points that they're trying to make there, um, but manhood, I think, on the one hand, one of the things that you read throughout the scriptures is, things like "Be strong, stand firm." And 1 Corinthians 16, "Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Let all that you do be done in love." Ooh, so that's like a man too, right? Um, I think. Um, Uh, I we're also told, in Ephesians, that we're supposed to be growing up into mature manhood. Now he's talking about all believers when he says that. So he's talking about spiritual growth into maturity, and being able to be strong in the faith, no matter your, um, you know, uh, whatever sex you might be. But there's a strength, right? So that's one thing in the scriptures that is very clear. But I think, personally, I guess, so I didn't prepare for this,
No,
but
yeah,
I
this is all thrown on you.
I had to go to one particular spot in the scriptures to quickly explain to someone, things to shoot for to grow as a man. I'm going to go to First Timothy, because even though those are qualifications for elders and deacons, all those really are, as you and I have talked about, more than once over the course of when we've been doing this, all those really are a description of a godly man. That's what those are. So, while I think that, the study, what is manhood, or how to be a man, or whatever, um, I mean, you could look, that's an ongoing Bible study, right? You could do character studies and look at Paul, and look at, Paul, even when he was wrong before, went all the way. He was all in. He took leadership roles. He stood by and watched Stephen get stoned because he was convinced that that was the right thing to do, and he was going to see it through. Um, and then after that, when Christ convinced him otherwise, he was all in, to his death, right? And so, you could look at David, or like any of these characters, right? That you can see things about them that are manly, if you will. Um, you could look at particular sins that men might struggle with in the lives of those other guys. Moses murdered a guy, right? Paul stood by as someone was stoned. David, uh, killed his friend and slept with Bathsheba. Like, there are cautionary tales about manhood as well, or tendencies, or things like that, men should use to, as caution. Um, but without time to do a whole, like, lengthy Bible study and go through Proverbs, like you mentioned, is an excellent book for that as well. Um, I would go directly to the qualifications for elder, deacon, and Timothy and Titus, because I think that
Yeah,
those are, it's one spot in the Bible where you can get a lot at once about
yeah.
manhood.
Well, and I think when you're talking about those, a lot of those would be the sort of things that you would use to really discern ads like that, right? Even though, again, I thought for sure it was parody, but when you're looking at it and you're using it, and you are being a discerning Christian, specifically in this case, a discerning man. You're going through, and the whole premise of the ad, like you said, is sort of cloaked. There's different things here where it's cloaked in humor to sort of get your guard down. But there are obviously things, primarily that of abortion, that they're talking about here, and the whole, abortion and IVF. And the idea is that if you're not on the side of those things, the ad's like, well, you're clearly scared of women then. Or, well, I guess women in leadership would be the third one. Those would be the three they were talking about in between, weaving in between everything else. And I think whenever you're talking about the qualifications that you're looking at there, and you're saying, how do I apply these to be discerning in a culture that you're currently in? I think at that point you do have to have some sort of grounding in who you are as a Christian man, not to be, again, I think you'd have to be fairly young in the faith to be like knocked off your stand by somebody telling you you're not manly enough if you don't believe this, right? I mean,
right.
But the reality is, it could be that could be accurate for somebody, being like, well, am I being misogynistic? But it's one of those things, I think, that if you're being discerning and you're in the scriptures, you're going to be able to say, well, like, that's not even what I'm talking about. Like the IVF thing, I thought was the most interesting. And again, one of the reasons I thought it was parody, because he goes, I'm not afraid of families. And I'm like, if that's not even the argument, bro. Like, that's, if you think the I'm afraid of families is the reason people are against IVF, you clearly don't understand the argument. And I think at that point, it really gives, what the ad does is say, okay, for me, when I watch it, I go, okay, what are the points then that I need to be super clear about whenever I am addressing these issues? And so it's not an issue of being like against women having a choice. It's just against women, murdering little people. It's not against IVF. It's against the fact that's tied to murdering little people. It's not against women, in power. It's against, what is this woman in power doing? And so I think when you're saying, going to the qualifications, talking about self-control, talking about, slow to anger, talking about, not greedy, all of these things, when you're discerning the world through those, you can sort of pull apart arguments in a way that that if you were a bit more immature, you wouldn't be able to do, which I would argue the ad itself is immature. It comes so low bar in how it tries to punch that it is operating from a very immature place. And so whenever you can approach it from a biblical perspective, it's easy to tear apart the arguments. And the reason it does come across as parody, I think, is because that can't really be your argument, can it? Yeah. But it is. And I think that's why it was so funny to so many people, is because you go, if that is what you think I think it is to be a man, you are so far off from reality that you're trying to be relatable comes off as like cringe. Like no wonder we can't hang out, because you think being a man showing up at at my house being like, I've got a wrench, let's fix things. It's like that. I don't think you know what's going on. So
Yeah, there's a so the ad in general, and what you were just talking about, I think is spot on. There's a, and this is true broadly speaking with her whole campaign. And I don't think this is going to be getting too political, but it's just an observation that I think that there is just a massive disconnect with actual dudes, right? Like every attempt that they've made, like it was big in the news just a day or two ago, Tim Walz in all of his hunting clips and not really knowing how to load a gun. And then in that first one that they were all that first one that it showed all of him and a bunch of hunting people or whatever in orange and not a gun in sight. And it's like, yeah, bro, maybe these people have hunted, but this is at best these are people who have hunted and are staging this in certain ways, because this isn't what a hunting trip looks like. The dude gets out of the truck with a gun and, and starts, you know what I mean? Like, and so it's almost like every time there's an attempt to identify with men, with just like the average guy, um, it's an epic fail. It's like you really don't understand who men are. And I'll just say this, by the definition of misogyny, um, but and how they the lenses through which they look, their worldview, I would clearly be a misogynist. Because it's a part of that is about discriminating against women, or and they would view, um, so when Donna and I first were getting married, not even afterward, uh, I had this conversation with her, and I'm like I'm the provider. That's the goal, is that I'm the provider, and I can do this, and you can um, uh, care for the household. When if you would like to go work, that's fine, but I don't want you to have to do that. That's my goal. And then when we had young children, um, it's I want her to be mom, not CEO of a bread factory or something like, and I want that, firstly, from kind of the biblical view of family and gender roles. But secondly, because the Bible sort of has it right, and that's the most healthy thing that you can do, right? If you can pull it off and make it, on one salary, which is increasingly difficult in our current situation, um, then that's the best thing for your children. I don't care what kind of punchback someone else might have, but that view that I just described is incredibly misogynistic, according to the worldview of that other team. So I would be a guy for sure, but a bad guy, I guess.
Well, because you gotta be manly, but just not like too manly. Like
What I should
so
really do is shave. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think this will be my last comment on this. Hopefully, this has been somewhat productive for those that are listening. But I think what you just said about the ad or the promotional piece, in which I haven't seen it, but what you described as far as them hunting, is that I know on sets, on like movie sets, they have like certain people there for the specific purpose of being like, hey, that's not authentic. You need to do this, and it makes it a bit more authentic to what
Hmm.
you're doing. They need to have like man coaches on like Democratic ads where they're like, there's an actual dude that's like, bro, like we would not do that. Like,
Hmm.
this is the order that things need to happen. Like, yeah, you need to just have an ex-Marine on set saying, hey guys, this is how you operate a gun. So,
But I'll say, like, so I'll say this, and it can be kind of my mic drop moment, and we can end it, but or at least my part. But I do think it would be hard for them to find that person. And I say that because guys, like, they're attempting to reach with a hunting clip or whatever, right? Guys, like, they're attempting to reach are almost certainly already attracted to voting for the guy who got shot in the ear and then raised his fist. Right? You know what I mean? Like, there's just something like that's manly-ish, right? About that kind of moment. Um and and I think that every time that they have attempted to identify with the regular man, it the epic fail that it always is even more of a turnoff. So, like, I think even if they nailed it now, it's like too late. Like, no one cares at this point. That's a guy that at least that demographic that they're attempting to reach. Um, Even if it's a person who's an unbeliever, and who doesn't have all the same convictions about abortion and whatnot that we would. it at this point, it's like you've either caught some of those fringe people. Most of those particular people in that demographic are already like, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a wider conversation we obviously can't get into as we're into the podcast here, but just on that, on the idea of saying like there is a definitive manliness, if there were, in how you react to situations, and when that's not there, it can't be faked. Like it's just a thing. It is something that is there, that's almost innate and has been taught, and there's something that is not. So even if you put on the hunting gear and you have the gun and you're out there shooting, there's just something about that you can go like, that's not your natural environment, and we can tell. And I think that there's something that comes off in that way, that there's a reality that vote is there to be had. But as you already said, I think there is something about even non-believing men that have a way to discern, like, yeah, I'm just not buying it. So anyway, guys, hopefully that was a little bit productive for you. My hope would be it was. If not, let us know below. And stay tuned, not stick tuned. Stay tuned. The next few weeks we'll release episodes. We got political stuff all the way up until the election. So we'll see you next week. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
And man up.
Don't. I need eagles flying.